was doing some reading, and I'm reading this book called Fall or Dodge in Hell. Yes, I believe that's what it's called. And there were two things that I really liked about it. One, so I made the mistake. I try never to read reviews, just opinions from people, right? So they read. So I accidentally, the reviews were there, so I read a few of them, and so I'm trying not to keep those in my mind while I'm reading this book, because it's just opinions, right? And just enjoy it on its merit. It's pretty dense in terms of language and a little bit slow. It's got a kind of a Stephen King speed to it, in terms of like Stephen King. If you read Stephen King books, they're never fast. They're never ever fast. It's always lots of detail, good imagination, some interesting character dialogue and background build up for characters, but it never goes at a fast pace, at least in the dozen or so Stephen King books I've read. So what is this called here? So what I am reading, here we go. Yeah, so this is what I'm reading right now. It's Fall or Dodge in Hell by Neil Stephenson. So dude who did Snow Crash, did Seven Eves. You know, he's considered like the godfather of like cyberpunk. Very, very cool. And the thing about this book so far is that I think that was the wrong button. Yeah, there we go. Is that the premise is this dude's super wealthy. It's pretty much modern day. It's like near, you know, like it's basically starts kind of modern day and then goes near future. I don't know how far it's going to go. In Seven Eves, it went generational. It was very interesting. And so in the story so far, this really, really mega wealthy programmer who basically got really rich programming simulations. So he described like one of the things this company did in the video game space is that when people are in a simulated sandbox like GTA 5, right? Your brain doesn't accept that the people you're looking at doing their things, the traffic, the cars, all that, it doesn't feel real. It's realistic in a lot of ways, but so he basically created all of the actors, so the drivers, the pedestrians, the people in the city. In a normal city, people are always about their business. They're always going and doing stuff. They're going to get groceries. Like they have their little narratives that are part of their lives. And when you see someone, you can relate to the stories that those people are on. Like if someone's in the trunk, like getting stuff out of the trunk, they're like, oh, like we've all been there and done that. So what they did is they wrote this algorithm that essentially gave all of the actors a simulated purpose. So then when you looked at like traffic patterns, traffic flow, pedestrians, so his company got really rich because they were acquired several times for their AI solutions for basically sandbox games. That was kind of like the takeaway. So you already got my interest, right? I'm like, okay, I'm cool. I like that aspect of it. So dude goes in for a procedure, and he basically this programmer, doing great, Doc, doing great, Hammer. I'm Doc, by the way. I was just talking about this book that I'm reading, which was kind of I had got to some really good parts, so I thought I would share. And basically, what he said in the will was he fell in with this group of people. This is like the .com era, right? It's like it's all pretty like it's modern, slightly .com era now is like, you know, a decade and a half old, but whatever, it's still within our you know, my lifetime. So yeah, so basically what happened was that you know, and I think I mentioned it before, but basically the this group of people got together and they said, hey, we're going to write out all these procedures for when you die and you're considered legally deceased, then they're going to essentially cryo-freeze your remains. And so, long story short, companies went out of business. Like there was an ethics thing around what to do with the bodies. They chopped off the heads because it was basically the brains. And so, fast forward through all of this and this legal minutia and kind of tech exchange and corporate stuff, and turns out that so they did these deep scans of brains by basically scanning them layer by layer and getting as much the scanning resolution that you could possibly get for the time, right? And then so they uploaded these scans into their servers, and then so the book, then this guy, he dies, and that, so basically he left two things in place. One is he left a family trust together for his heirs, and because the company had made so much money, like crazy filthy amounts of money, it was very interesting. The Bobaverse trilogy, that was a great great series of books. I wish that he would write more in that series. That was so cool. No, but those are amazing books to read. If you guys haven't read them, you should. No, this is Neil Stephenson, and it's called Fall, or Dodge in Hell. So, but similar premise, right? And so this guy's a computer programmer, amongst other things. And so he basically, he set up these two foundations. One was for his family and all of his descendants and heirs. So it gets multi-generational. That's something that Neil Stephenson likes to do. He likes to do like multiple generations of people. And then he sets up another research facility, which basically says, which he basically just says, hey, this company, this R&D company, their charter, with all this filthy amounts of money that he has that he's put into it, the charter for the company is to essentially invest in video game technology. So very much like the Bobaverse, right? Like where he goes into the VR thing and he starts talking about it, he kicks up his resolution, and like we're on a similar journey here, which is super cool. So in this world, he describes, we're probably about 15 years from now ish. That's the way it feels, ish, maybe closer to 20. And so everyone's wearing AR glasses, right? As they are basically their HUDs. And then also the interesting thing is that so there were two strange things that happened, and this is really cool the way he described it. And this is what also was really cool about Snow Crash. Some very cool concepts. So basically, people in this world, they have everyone has like personal feed editors, right? This is how all the information flows into you, like movies, social, everything you have. And you basically have a feed curator, someone that essentially goes through and prepares things, and some of it's very much AI driven, just algorithmic. Some of it is hand curated, depending on if you're wealthy or not. So if you're wealthy, you have feed curators to help save you that time. And so he describes that what happens is that he makes the case, he says, when people go to a theater and they watch a movie, everyone in that theater is essentially subscribing to a mass hallucination at that point, right? Everyone goes, we all suspend reality, and then for those 2 hours, we are looking at a series of moving pictures and becoming engrossed in the world of the cinema. So it's a collective hallucination, right? That's the interesting piece. And so what he says, right, and there's this interesting cataclysmic event that happened, and I'll tell you about that in a second. Enoch, I hope you're doing well. We're just having some good conversation here. So anyways, mass hallucination, that's what happens when you go to see a movie. So he says then, so we were still a culture where reality and science, in fact, were agreed upon. And then when we move to a culture where everyone is jacked into a feed all the time, you can still, and you're okay if you have a job or family, if you have IRL connections that you continue to, to help anchor you in reality. But he then describes that for people that are not anchored by those things, then they just get 24/7 feed. And depending on the feeds that they subscribe to, a lot of them are just, like I said, algorithmic, right? That then basically allows them to essentially exist in almost a pure hallucination, right? Because, it's not like VR or anything. It's like it's there. It's always there. And as it's feeding through, you're engrossed in that feed. And so he describes like things that happen that already happened in the modern day, right? Like, so people will be sitting together, and then one person's like, oh, I'm so-and-so. And they're like, oh, it's nice to meet you. And then one person's already looking them up on their feed, right? They're like, oh, who is this guy? What's their Wikipedia page? Oh, you can't trust Wikipedia because of this and that. Blah, blah. Or you could just talk to the person in front of you to have that. Very, very cool, subtext to the whole thing.